Hi people and how my Chili Con Carnage crew, Chili here from Live Listener Race, doing a special episode. This is an album ranking on Slayer and all of their albums that they have released to date. Yes, that is of course a lot of records, and we're going to cover a lot of heavy metal. And of course, one of the best bands from the Big Four. Hey, I know a lot of people here are going to be commenting saying that they are the best, but you might know which one's my favourite. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump into this list and we talk about the worst album first of all. Starting off the list is going to be Undisputed Attitude. This is a record that I just don't give a shit about at all. It is just this, I don't know, it's a covers album, but the band Slayer never needed to do a covers album, did they? They are Slayer. We know what their music is about. It's not like Metallica, who gets a kind of free pass because they have the skill set and I guess have showed variations in their styles of music, where they did Garage Inc. and you know it allowed them to describe their music. They had help me hell. They're covering all the stuff like Motorhead and King Diamond, and then they're doing Nick Cave as well. But with Slayer, we know what Slayer's about. We know that they're very, very straight and narrow path what they follow. And of course, on this record, they do a fair bit of hardcore punk honest tunes, and something just feels very off about this whole record. I don't know why, but it just doesn't feel right hearing Slayer doing a whole bunch of covers in their style, of course, of a whole bunch of hardcore punk tunes from the 80s. I don't like it. I've never liked it. I'm glad it's a short album, but I feel like it's a bit of a stopgap album between these records that were coming out in the 90s. Because yeah, there were a lot of years between these records, and they're pumping out a live album here, and of course, Undisputed, Bloody Attitude comes out as well. You know, we have to release something, we need to get a little bit of money. Yeah, okay, we get it now. Next on my list, and it's going to give me a lot of hatred here, but World Painted Blood. I do not like this album. I know a lot of people love it. I know a lot of people absolutely love this record. I hate it. I think it's the most boring record the band has ever put out to date. Gary Holt joins the band, unfortunately after, of course, Jeff's passing. And it's a shame because Gary is a talented guitarist. I think he's got extremely talented, which he does, of course, as well later on in the band. But for this record, it kind of feels like Kerry King's just taken over, wants to do his thing, and just, it's such a dull sounding affair right from the start. It's just so forgettable. For me, I've always had a disdain for this record. It's like the album cover. It's so blank, it's so basic, I don't give a shit about it. At the end of the day, people will say, oh yeah, Well Painted Blood was a great track, or maybe, hey, Unit 731. I've heard these songs, I don't care. They just don't sound good. It's a very blasé, very forgettable album. I never liked it when it first came out, and I still do not like it to this day. I'm very passionate about this one, at the very bottom, I guess, and people will be surprised, of course, by having this record here so low in the mix. But yes, I went back to this album only the other day. Just like, oh, surely I'm wrong here. Surely I'm mistaken. I've missed something. I go back, I listen to it just the other day. I'm still of the same opinion that nope, this album is crap. So nothing changed my mind, and it will always be this low in my list. Never want to listen to this album again. The next up on the list is going to be the live Undead Haunting the Chapel record. It's a mix, and it's a little bit of cheating because, yeah, technically it is a live album, but it is, of course, the Haunting the Chapel EP is mixed into this. So, yeah, around about the time that, Slayer was starting off, they released 2 records, and it was going to be the live Undead, and of course features a lot of the live tracks from their debut album, and then they had Haunting the Chapel. It's like, 3 tracks, I think, or a 4-track EP. And in the end, they decided to merge these two for the record moving forward, which is what I have done for this one. And I just don't really like this record because, it reflects the early sounds of the band, which I don't like, and it reflects it in a poor audio live recording, which just sounds worse. And even with the EP, Haunting the Chapel, again, it's just the live section, it's just early stages of the band that I don't really care about. So I've never had a strong opinion I've never held them in high regards, their early works. I've always thought that they've always taken baby steps as to where they would be going, moving forward with their music. And this is no different. This is just showcasing that, yeah, we played loud and we played it to a great crowd or whatever, but I just never got into that whole thing. And especially in recent times, Slayer has released a whole bunch of live records from back in like 1984 and 1985 and stuff at the moment with these what was it, Live in the Catacombs or something like that. What was it? Crowded Tombs, sorry. It's and Rain This Night back in 1984. Both of these records were recorded before Raining Blood, and they both sound like arse. I'm sorry, but every single early Slayer live recording I've ever heard just sounds terrible, and I don't like it. Many people do. I'm not one of those people. I do not see these live recordings, having a lure to them because they sound like shit. I hear them as shit. That's it. Sorry. Well, speaking of early works, I'm going to go with Show No Mercy. Yeah, this is, of course, the following footsteps from the previous notes I just made. I do not like Slayer's early music. I think they're extremely primitive, and they would, of course, expand upon what they would do. But back in the early days, the band were trying to be, I don't know, I'm not going to say like hair metal or anything like that. They're trying to sound that wasn't them. They're trying to make it in a field that already had many bands out there. They're trying to be almost like a Metallica knockoff to a degree. So, there's just this style of the band that I think they're trying to find their footing on, and it just isn't working. It's okay. It's definitely not bad, but it's just not what we would, of course, expect of the band to be coming out later on. So yeah, Show No Mercy is that very early sound, very, very unrefined, very raw as well. And I think it's an interesting, tidbit into what the band had at the very start of their career to what they would achieve towards a few years later. Very, very different times. So I like it. It's intriguing, but it doesn't hold. Yeah, I don't go back to it at all very often. Very, very little, actually, do I go back to it. So the next one on my list is going to be Diabolis Musa, and this is a record that most people would say is Slayer's worst album. And for a long time it was my worst album by Slayer, but I actually never listened to this album in full. I went back only about a week ago because I thought, yeah, I've never listened to this album. Let's give it a shot. Let's give it a chance. And I actually really think it's got some good tunes here. There is some decent tracks from the get-go. You got Bitter Peace, Stain of Mind, and what was the other one? I think it was Perversions of Pain or Death's Head, one of those tracks there. And it's certainly Slayer. It's certainly, I guess, that sound that people would always recognise. People always refer to this album as the moment that Slayer went new metal. I don't hear that on this record. I actually think that's a very disingenuous statement to make. New metal was a thing that was coming out, but Slayer were never really taking that approach when they came to their music. They never have, they never would take any kind of other music. Slayer are writing Slayer's music, and that is what this record reflects. I don't think there's really any new metal influences on here because you know what new metal is about. Hell, that's got like hip hop drum beats and stuff. You listen to Korn, they've got the hip hop drum beats, they've got the bass work in particular. That is the most important stuff. And Korn is pretty much the people who grandfathered new metal into what it would become. There is none of that here on this record. It's a Slayer record at the end of the day. I very, very much would like to know why people started lumping it with the new metals, token, I guess. And that's because probably it came out around about that time, and it wasn't as strong as previous works. But when I listen to it, hell, I just think that it's not deserving of the hatred that it gets, but it is deserving of course, some hatred. Yeah, it's not a solid record. It's certainly not a strong outing. But it's not a bad one either, and I think a lot of people, myself included, have overlooked this record for the longest of times because, it's the worst thing they've ever done. Very much doubtful. Because, it's ranked higher than a few other ones on the list already. The next album that I'm picking is Hell Awaits, and that is an album that I just do not come back to a lot, and I kind of forget about it a lot of the time. But then when I do come and revisit it, it's like, oh damn, this album's still got its strong pieces. At Dawn They Sleep, for example, is one of those tunes that I guess really kind of really kill it. And Hell Awaits, that first song, wow. But yeah, it's this album that I always forget about as far as, Slayer's discography. It's one of those records that just gets forgotten and overlooked by, of course, what came after it. But it's a very short affair as well. I think it's only like 30-something minutes compared to, all the rest of their stuff. It's only 7 tracks long as well. It's a very short kind of affair. Longer songs, shorter affair in general, but yeah, Hell Awaits is definitely not an album that I really come back to often, and I should go back to a lot more, to be honest. I'm looking at it and oh yeah, it's great, it's intriguing. It's got that album cover on it that would allude to what would come after it as well. I think it's great. And it also made for a very intriguing t-shirt designed by Friends of Rom, where they were on tour at the Download Festival, and Slayer was there as well. They made a shirt design and it said Pell Awaits. Now, Pell is George Pell, and he was basically on trial for possible CP related material and other stuff like that. The usual stuff you can expect from the Catholic Church, except he had to be extradited from another country, but was too sick to be extradited from, Italy. He was the Archbishop, I think, in Italy at the time, or something for Australia. I don't know the whole hierarchy. Anyway, Friends of Rom, of course, were on tour at Download Festival. Slayer was the main act performing, taking over for Ozzy Osbourne, who couldn't make it that year. And they made this shirt design, so it's just saying Pell Awaits instead of Hell Awaits, and I loved it. I even saw that shirt just randomly about 2 weeks ago. I was just driving on my way to work. This person had that shirt on. I had to do a double take because, I haven't seen that shirt in quite a few years. So I loved it. And I guess every time I hear Hell Awaits, that's what I link it to now. Not the Slayer album, but that shirt. So, yeah. Great tunes. Very much an overlooked album as far as the discography goes. But very good music on hand. Next one on my list is the record that is celebrating its 30th anniversary as of the recording of this episode. We're talking about Divine Intervention. Now, this album has probably one of the best album artworks, I reckon, as far as all of Slayer's artworks is concerned. I think this album artwork is just amazing to look at. It's just got this incredible look to it that I'm pretty sure it looks like a model as well. It doesn't look like it was drawn. I could be wrong there. But anyway, I digress. Let's talk about the music here, because Divine Intervention is this record that gets overlooked a lot as far as like Slayer's catalogue goes and all their music on offer. And there's a lot of reasons behind this. It's during this tenor of the band where they were releasing, of course, some terrible albums that we've already discussed, but it was also one of the worst sounding records the band had put out in some years. You're looking back at their previous works, which have been mixed by people like Rick Rubin and sound absolutely amazing and timeless. And then you come up to this one, and it's a massive, massive step back as far as what is concerned on this record. It's just got a very bad quality to it. It, to me, feels like it's got the quality from their debut album. That's how bad it is, this production level. I know there was a comment as far as the short that I said, and people were saying that there is a intriguing factor as far as the production of it goes, and it's talking about this underlying uneasiness within the music, and I never thought of it that way, to be fair. It's I think the production is just marred by on purpose. Sorry, not on purpose, just by accident, I guess, maybe due to whatever reasons it was. I don't think there is any reason to believe that there was a purpose to this bad quality and feeling uneasy. I think it just comes hand in hand with the music that is on offer, especially when you compare some of the tracks here that are absolutely amazing. You've got Killing Fields, Sex, Murder, Art, 213, of course, which is about the whole Jeffrey Dahmer thing, which was very fresh on people's minds. We're talking about The Apartment Number, if you're unaware of that. So, yeah, all these tracks here is just good, and it's very underappreciated. So I think you got to go out, because it's 30-year anniversary, you got to go out and listen to Divine Intervention. Disregard the talking points that I've just made as far as production goes, but it is a good record nonetheless. The next one on my list is going to be Repentless, and this was an album that I thought was actually going to be almost in my top 3 records, because for the longest of times, I loved this record. You know, it is the last Slayer album they ever released. I know a lot of people hate this record. A lot of people have strong opinions that this is the last ever heard from Slayer. But I thought that this album was a very solid affair. You know, you got of course, the opening intro, the Delusions of Savior, not a bad piece as far as what it is. Atmospheric as hell. And Repentless is this tune that is so strong. And there's a lot of other songs as well that goes absolutely nuts. We're talking, you know, Chasing the Light Implode, and of course When Stillness Comes. All these songs are amazing. Nothing, of course, to Repentless, which I think is probably one of the greatest songs they ever put out in the last maybe 20 years. It's such a balls to the wall kind of tune, and I believe a great way to send off the band. And you know, I think Repentless is going to be an album that I've always going to defend, because it is the album that I saw Slayer on, you know, back in the Download Festival in 2019, or was it 2018, I'm forgetting now. But you know, this was the last time that I could see Slayer. I had to see Slayer, of course, and it was amazing to hear them come on, to hear them pump Repentless, and the crowd going nuts. So of course I'm going to be a bit more biased towards this record, but I know a lot of people hate it, and I just never understood why. I think it's a really good record. I think it's a really strong record as well. You know, I think it's got a lot of tracks here that work so well, and it's much better than Well Painted Blood. So I'm glad that we got this record to send them off, as opposed to Well Painted Blood. You know, but as for, you know, I mentioned earlier, I thought this was going to hit number 3. It, of course, has been much lower, because when I went back to listen to it, it, I guess, lost a bit of value. And it's a bit unfortunate, because, you know, it was such a strong album. But then I was listening to, I guess, the last half, where it drops off a bit. Certainly drops off a fair bit. And it's like, yep, this is a bit dull, this is a bit one-dimensional. I don't like this. So, yeah, you know, compared to some of the other albums that are going to come up a bit later on, this album unfortunately dropped, about 3 spots or something like that, just because I had to go back and re-listen to it. So, yeah, unfortunate, but yeah, Repentless is still a strong album. Oof, the next one, such a strong outing by the band with God Hates Us All. What a fantastic record. And this is really one of the first introductions to the band that I had. I've always heard of Rain in Blood, and of course everyone has back in the day, but the track Here Comes the Pain is the song that I first heard, and it was actually off a little soundtrack that I had, and you know, featured this band. Who the hell's Slayer? And what kind of pain are they bringing? And I swear, the soundtrack that I had, the version at least of that tune, was faster than what is on the studio album. Always had a Mandela effect, that when I listened to this album, that version I first heard, it was much faster. So when I went to listen to the studio version, I'm like, this doesn't sound right. Something's a little bit off here. I could be wrong. But anyway, I digress. It's this really brutal sounding record here. I think the band are firing all gears, coming out strong. We're talking about, of course, as well, this is the album that was released actually on 9/11 as well, from memory. Yeah, I believe it was released on 9/11. It was unfortunate. You're going to have a title, God Hates Us All. You know, it's released on that date. So, yeah, it was also an album that had to be redesigned as far as artwork goes. And yeah, look, Slayer's got some in-your-face kind of artwork. And I believe this record really takes the cake. But, you know, the newer design, I think it's intriguing. Still would prefer the original. But yeah, you know, there's a lot of tracks here. It's a blast to go through this. It's short, it's just brutal, basic, and aggressive as all hell. You know, you go down the track list from Disciple, God Send Death, Threshold, amazing track, New Faith as well, Seven Faces, and Bloodline. Whoa, yes, what a great track that one is. And, you know, again, Here Comes the Pain and Payback. All these songs here are just one after the other. Strong, really great tunes. I love to hear this album playing it from time to time. So, yeah, it ranks quite highly in my opinion. I think it's a really solid effort. It got higher than Repentless, which a bit surprised me, but whatever. Anyway, this is the list that I'm giving you, and this is just where it landed. Next up is going to be Christ Illusion, and what a strong effort, and of course the last one that we would have with Jeff. It's very sad news, of course, when Jeff passed. It was a massive shock to us all, and a big blow. But Christ Illusion, I think, is a great way, of course, to have him sent off, and his music is always going to be remembered. I absolutely love and adore this record with its brutality. And of course Slayer, we're talking Slayer here, so they're going to be brutal. It's always going to be a word that is reoccurring as far as their music is concerned. Flesh Storm is just launching us right into, I guess, the eye of the storm almost to begin with. Catalyst as well, Skeleton Christ, and Eyes of the Insane is so damn awesome. I love Eyes of the Insane. And then it jumps across and gets the Jihad, which is another cool song with Conspiracy. There's only 10 tracks on offer. Again, it's another very short affair, but it's right to the point. It doesn't really fuck around. And I just love this album for how brutal and to the point that it gets. You know, it's this really intriguing album that came out in 2006, an interesting time as far as metal was concerned. And I think it was a perfect sounding record as far as Slayer could do. And I'm a bit surprised again to see this record rank as high as it did, but again, it's just, you know, in my opinion, it's just come up so high because I loved it. It's got these tracks, pretty much that first half of the album, absolutely incredible. So again, I'd love to hear your opinion in regards to Christ Illusion, because I know a lot of people are probably thinking it gets much lower in the list, but this is my list anyway. These are my comments, and hey, you're listening, so this is where it sits. Three spots, here we go. I mean, we all kind of guess where number one's going, but what's going to be with the next two spots, you're kind of wondering. And yeah, for me, it's going to be Seasons in the Abyss as number 3. This record is just so dark. It's so, I don't even know. The album artwork always caught me off guard. It's this weird little design of something going on here, and I guess it really perfectly sums up, of course, what the music is about and all that. And 1990, as far as Slayer is concerned, they're just taking over the world. You know, you're hitting the triumvirate, the perfect trio of records here, and this is the last one that we would see, you know, of a perfect era for them. And Seasons in the Abyss is just absolutely mind-blowing. War Ensemble, great track. Dead Skin Mask, oof, amazing. You know, Skeletons of Society, absolutely amazing as well. And of course the last track, the title track, Seasons in the Abyss. All of these tracks are just so nasty in the right kind of way. And it's this record that sometimes I overlook just because of that album artwork, to be honest. You know, I kind of go, oh god, that album artwork, it's so ugly. I don't mean that it's bad artwork. I just mean like it stirs. It's got these really weird colours to it, you know, and it stirs. It's a very uneasy looking record cover when you're looking at it. I mean, look at this figure, this random skeleton, almost looking humanoid person. You know, a whole bunch of Christ imagery and devouring of souls, or vomiting, I guess, into a pit. And of course, it's all this oranges and yellows and reds going on. It's just a very uneasy looking image to behold, and you know, I sometimes overlook this record just because of that. It's a very ugly and uneasy image, but then when I do click onto it, I'm like, oh shit, here we go. You know, it's a great album. I think it's a perfect way for Slayer to jump into the 90s. It's unfortunate what would come next, but well, a lot of bands from the 80s didn't really do well in the 90s. Just how it is. That's just how music was. It always happens, and it always will, and it's going to continue happening. So anyway, Seasons in the Abyss, people, number 3. So that leaves number 2, of course, with South of Heaven. There was no surprise, of course, for that. And this is just another great record that follows on from their previous efforts. You know, again, like I mentioned, it was the trio of albums that were flawless, absolutely incredible, and leaving Slayer as the undoubted heavy metal kings as far as the big four were concerned. They were the heaviest band. They were the fastest band. And South of Heaven almost kind of derailed that whole image because they were getting experimental, you know, they were trying something out here. And I say experimental because, you know, this is Slayer we're talking about. They're not jumping shit. They're not doing too much. They're a very, let's admit it, very one-dimensional band. They're not going to fuck spiders. You know, we're not here to fuck spiders. Let's get to it. They're going to play their heavy metal music and get down to basics. But, you know, on South of Heaven, they're trying things out. They're turning off, they're turning off their distortion. They're trying for clean guitars. They're doing a little bit of odd time signatures here and stuff. And it does sound very different, especially when you're going for like Spill the Blood or, South of Heaven and stuff like that. But yeah, look, the band have shifted something up here, and I think it worked very well. But I don't know as far as like, should they have continued doing it? That's another question, I guess, a different question for later. But again, it is such an amazing effort that they did here. So, South of Heaven, it's an album that I need to go back to. I haven't listened to this one in a long time, so I'm going to go back and listen to it while I'm editing this, definitely. South of Heaven, people, oof. Well, of course, that leaves the last record that is the one and only album that everyone should have at their number one spot, Rain in Blood. It is perhaps no surprise. I'm more curious, actually, if people would be not ranking Rain in Blood at the number one spot, at least why that is the case. Because this is Slayer. This is the record that just put them on the bloody map. Rick Rubin is just doing their absolute best with the band here, and Angel of Death. We are talking about the Angel of Death, of course, Joseph Mengele or whatever his fucking name is. Who cares about that guy? And the dark and absolutely stuffed up stuff he did to people and prisoners while they were in their internment. So, it's so brutal. Listening to it and going, oh my god, what have I just gotten into? It's such an absolute torment. But they pull it off. They do it. They make it work. I don't know how. You're talking about the darkest realms of society, and you're doing it with this incredible music, and it all fits the narratives that you're singing about. It's almost like everything was going against this record to not work, and yet it did. It's bizarre. It's very bizarre, and I guess it's also reflective of the album artwork again, which is very iconic. It's the artwork that everyone knows Slayer for. I don't think it's the best one that they've done. I don't particularly like this artwork. I think it's okay. It's odd. It is what it is. It was the record that sold them squillions, but I've never really felt great about this record's album artwork. So yeah, Angel of Death, absolutely great. Piece by Piece, another great tune. Criminally Insane, I think that one got revitalized as well. Wasn't that on an early record? Pretty sure that was on the earlier album, one of their debut ones. But yeah, Jesus Saves, Necrophobic. All of these songs from start to finish. It's such a good record, and there's a reason why. Of course, we are getting to that last track, Rain in Blood, and why it just did so well. We're talking about perhaps top 3 metal anthems of all time. I'm talking throughout every decade, throughout every genre. I'm talking about top 3. We're up there with like Black Sabbath and Metallica, I guess, maybe. But easily, Rain in Blood is in that list because it's just that drum, that intro gets everyone's blood chills, with just chills, goosebumps, dun dun dun. Everyone knows what's up. Everyone's just pausing and waiting for that thing, that moment. They're hearing that thunder, the crashing, the rain pouring, dun dun dun, and it kicks in. Dun 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 dun. And oh my god, when you hear that riff, it's so damn good. Being in that pit, seeing Slayer live, hearing Rain in Blood, and just going in circles with every other fanatic in that crowd, is possibly one of the best moments of my life as far as live concerts go. It was nuts, and it was just amazing. So I'm so happy to have that experience and hear them perform that song live. So that's my list, of course, of Slayer and all the music that they have on offer, ranked from worst to best. It's not surprising, I guess, that the number one spot was going to be Rain in Blood. What was a bit surprising for me, at least, was that midsection. It was very hard to, go through from which albums I would pick as far as where they would sit. I was a bit surprised to see Repentless drop so low after listening to it, and Christ's Illusion jump up a few spots, but it is what it is. It's just sitting how it is. I absolutely love it. Divine Intervention as well, coming up from the ranks. But Diabolis and Musica, that is the one. That was going to be my number, the very beginning of the list. And purely because I just didn't listen to the entire album. So I'm glad that I went back and listened to it for, because Slayer is one hell of a band. We all love them. And I've gone back and listened to all these tracks and gone, damn, it's so good just to play these songs. But as always, when it comes to these lists, I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about this list? Comment below and tell me, as well as letting me know your rank as far as how you would rank every single Slayer album from best to worst. Comment below. I love hearing these things. I love to read them, and I'll make sure to comment back to you as well. But thank you for checking out this episode. Do that social stuff, and of course consider subbing to the channel and doing all that other jazz. If you've enjoyed this content, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to us, and stay notified for future music related content, because it keeps our manager happy at the end of the day. We are also on Discord, Instagram, Facebook, and all those other social platforms if you want to check us out. As always, people, you have a great day and stay spicy.